Hello, everybody. Hello to everyone who's listening. This is the Podcasters of Vandan. I'm Andrew's Corner, and I had this idea for a long time now. And a lot of you who've seen my channel know about the stories that a lot of you know about the Princess of Vandan stories that were written by Malaka, some written by Acrophyte on Giantess World, the story site for people who are interested in writing giantess stories and original stories. And a lot of you are familiar with the stories that I've done, narrated essentially on my YouTube channel. All of Malaka's works, The Princess of Vandan, Children of Vandan Chronicles, Far From Home, and with the latest, the most recent story that has just come out, The Sword of Revenge. Forgive me if you guys hear my dog barking in the background. I'm recording this from home. And like I said, I had this idea for a podcast centered on the stories of Vandan and hoping to include some of the authors, some of the creators, some of the people I've collaborated with on these stories, some of the voice artists. I've actually gotten into contact with them, and I'm really looking forward to that. But today is something very special. I was able to convince one of the authors to actually talk on my podcast, and it's amazing. I was actually able to contact Malaka to be able to come on board for today and share about himself, share about his inspiration for the story, his life, and I didn't think I was going to be able to do it. I definitely wanted to, I definitely want to respect his privacy and everything like that. I didn't want to pressure him and everything, but I am so excited to be able to talk to him today. And hopefully those who really love his work, love his stories, are excited as well. I can't wait for this. So let's welcome Malaka, everybody.
Looks like it worked.
Yeah, it is. I'm really glad it does. I'm really excited to talk to you.
Yeah, no, I'm excited to talk to you as well.
Let me just start by saying I apologize for everything, being a little bit hectic. I kid you not, right before you messaged me, I was finishing cleaning my betta fish tank. So I was getting that done and trying to, make sure, okay, that's taken care of. So, but I appreciate your flexibility.
Okay, no, that's fine. It's like 3:45 in the afternoon here at the moment, so I'm not doing anything on a Sunday afternoon. So this is actually the best time for me to talk.
I'm also really thankful that you've agreed to be my first guest on here. I've been thinking about it for a while because this isn't new to you, but I just really love your stories. I feel like I can't get enough of them, and while I'm waiting for the next set of stories, I think it's Sylvie's journey to finish.
I'm waiting for that as well.
I thought about how cool would it be to actually get to talk to the authors, you, Acrophyte, and maybe even some of the voice actors, because it's interesting because when you're collaborating on like YouTube or like Giantess World and everything else, like as much as you talk and collaborate, sometimes we never really get the chance to like communicate like through audio or video. And I thought if I could talk to you just once, like that would be really awesome.
Yeah. Well, then at least you get to hear what I sound like. I already know what you sound like from your narration on YouTube of my stories, which I really enjoy listening to.
I take that I take that as such a compliment because I'm one of those people where I hate listening to my voice like on recordings and everything because it's like, that's not a good inflection. Oh, why didn't I sound right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's the same with me as well. I probably won't even watch this on YouTube then.
Well, rest assured, there won't be photographs. There won't be anything else. I just appreciate your willingness to. It's I really appreciate it.
Okay, no, it's nice talking to someone about this, and not just on like chat rooms and stuff, but like real life, I guess.
Yeah, and I have to say this. I hope this doesn't come across as offensive, but when I think of South Africa, I kind of think of the
Yeah,
stereotype of South Africa, like, oh yeah, like fresh fruit markets, you know, savannas, wide open plains. So, for me and
yeah.
some of the
No,
people who
that
are listening, could you tell us a little bit about like what's it like growing up in South Africa?
Yeah, I what you described with the savannas and the wide open plains, that's actually a lot of what life was like for me growing up, because I grew up on a small farm outside the capital city of South Africa, which is Pretoria, which is where I'm living at the moment. But yeah, growing up, my family and I and my brother, we would all just go off camping, uh, just out in the wilderness for much of it. So that's actually not that much of a stereotype. But so yeah, but at the moment I'm living here in the capital city, so I haven't gone out for a long time due to COVID and all that. So there was some pretty severe restrictions here in the whole country. So, but hopefully in the future I'll be able to do it again.
Yeah, hopefully. And
Yeah,
th-
yeah. Also, I did a lot of traveling just in general, visiting neighboring countries of South Africa um, while I was growing up. So for me, it was very enjoyable just having so much experience while growing up of visiting all these sorts of places and getting to see all the wildlife and things like. Um, a few years ago, I actually did a short course, like a field guide course, where I went out into the bush with some other people and we learned about the wildlife and the plants and the birds and everything. And that meant a lot to me as well. I did that as a job for a year afterwards as well. I'm not doing it at the moment, but I'd like to get back to doing it again sometime.
Wow, that's awesome. I mean, I've been to a few places in my life. I've also gone camping a couple areas in the USA, but
Yeah,
that sounds amazing. You know, being able to like travel to I mean, not only through South Africa, but other kinds of countries. And
yeah,
you sound like quite a traveler. And I gotta say, I feel a little bit jealous because the only places, I kid you not, that I've been to outside of the US are Canada
hmm,
with Viagra Falls. You know, not really, not
yeah.
Niagara Falls. I
The
mean,
border.
but and also Mexico and maybe Hawaii, but
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
part of the U.S., so that doesn't really count. But I'd love to, you know, like travel
yeah,
to like Europe and Africa. You know, like South Africa is like very beautiful. You know, like it'd be amazing to to see that, be out there and experiencing just the amazing nature. It's one of a kind nature, really. You just can't really describe it.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's very diverse as well. It's not just savannas. We have rainforests and deserts and high mountains, and really, it's like all of the world packed into one small country. So there's quite a lot to see. And I've actually spoken to many Americans as well while I was doing the field guide work. Yeah, and they all agreed it was very beautiful here. And some of them even said they would like to stay and live here
I,
just because of the nature.
I don't blame them. I mean, the what you see in like photographs and documentaries, like it's like very beautiful there. And yeah, I mean,
Yeah, yeah.
I probably would feel the same way if
Yeah,
I ever got to visit
I
or
even
like
have a
did a few
few
things.
photos on my DeviantArt from a few years ago when I first made my account on DeviantArt. I uploaded a few photos that was when I was still doing the field guide work. So there's a few photos from what I was doing then. I might upload some more in the future. Um, People didn't seem to comment on them that much, which is understandable considering the main focus of my DeviantArt page. But I might do that again because I still have hundreds more.
To be fair, it does kind of make sense because the people I think
Uh,
that
uh,
are looking out your DeviantArt page, they're probably trying to look at like the Giantess photos, and it's just like, oh, here's a
yeah,
certain place I've been to. It's like, nah, I want to see the Giantess.
yeah, yeah. It's a nice flower I saw on a hike, but yeah.
I do have to ask this though, given how much of a world traveler you are, was that a part of? Would you say you've incorporated a little bit of that into, at the very least, some of your characters in the Van Dan stories, traveling to like various countries, various like lands, and was that like part of your
Yeah,
inspiration?
it's a bit of that, and also a lot of from reading these kinds of fantasy stories that involve a lot of traveling. Because one of my big hobbies is reading and watching movies and stuff like that. So um, I try to sort of copy those stories, stuff like Gulliver's Travels, which is
Oh yeah.
probably the most famous giantess story, mainstream giantess story ever written. And yeah, just stuff like Lord of the Rings and those kinds of things that are where characters go on a big journey and discover new things, and at the end of the story they make it home again, and they've sort of changed from that experience. So that was the main inspiration, I think, for. Well, I think it was the second Vandan story. That was the one where Sylvie and Valden traveled
Oh
outside
yeah.
of the kingdom for the first time. That was basically inspired by those kinds of stories.
I think that's a pretty good summation of how to like describe, at the very least, the Princess of Vandan stories. It's like a cross between Lord of the
Yeah,
Rings with that big epic like fantasy landscape, but even a little bit of like Gulliver's Travels, where people are kind of used to
yeah,
like Lilliput and Gulliver being in the land of little people, but I think a lot of people
yeah.
don't consider like he visits other lands like Brob. I'm gonna mess this up. Brobdingnag.
Brobdingnag. Yeah.
And when I saw
No,
that,
I
like,
know how to say it because I've read the story several times
right,
over. So it's one of my favorite stories.
I've only seen some of the films and some of the
Yeah,
shorts that they've done, but I really love that they've included some of that into it, like the land of the giants, how like he's introducing gunpowder, living with Glumdaclitch, and I found it very cool, and I feel like people focus too much
yeah,
on the Lilliput. It's like there's other good stories out there. That's not all that he's known for.
yeah. Yeah, the Lilliput story is probably most famous because it's the most exciting, most stuff happens in it, and it's also the one that I think kids enjoy the most because some of the later stories in Gulliver's Travels are more written towards adults. They're more of a political satire than they are travel
Right.
stories. So as an adult, it's more enjoyable reading those than the Lilliput one.
So, for those who are listening, and something that I've been wanting to ask you, especially when it comes to the Van Dan stories,
Yeah.
what made you specifically want to write a story about a giantess? Like, what was your initial interest in writing about giantesses?
Well, yeah, that wasn't the first giantess story that I wrote. I think it was the fifth or the sixth. So before then, I've been writing these stories for a few years on Giantess World. But what made me want to write my own stories is basically I really like the more gentle side of the whole Giantess fantasy, the one that doesn't involve a lot of violence and cruelty and things like that, which you find in most stories,
Right.
which seem to be what most people enjoy about it, but I don't. But also, I did find a few stories that I really liked on sites like Giantess World and also writing.com when I was first started looking for these stories. And they really inspired me. Like at first I would just look at these stories and or just download them and rewrite them myself and add things that I like especially stories that didn't have a lot of detail in them. I would add details to them, stories from other authors, and then just make them into something that I enjoy more myself. And then after doing that a few times, I decided maybe I should just write a completely new story and see how that turns out and put it on Giantess World. And luckily, the first story which I did write there, which was called First Love, I think, it got a very positive response from the other authors there, including several authors whose stories I really enjoyed. So that really motivated me as well to keep on doing this. And yeah, I've been doing it for 12 years now, I think.
That's awesome, and I really love
Yeah,
that you wanted to focus on stories that where the relationship between a giantess and humans, where it was more gentle focus. It's not like a giant warlord like fee fi fo fum. I feel like we've seen a lot of that,
yeah,
and
yeah. Yeah.
this
Yeah, that's also why I like these stories, is because it's not something you see usually. Like I especially like stories with well developed female characters in them, but there's not a lot of them in the fantasy genre. I don't know, maybe there are more now compared to when I was growing up. but
Maybe.
here in South Africa, it's not really that popular a genre to find in bookstores. So again, it's something I decided I should maybe try doing myself if I like these stories and I can't find them to read for myself. So that's what I did.
I do have to say, like, one of my favorite, my favorite thing about Valerie, Princess Valerie, is not only does she seem very heartfelt and genuine and gentle, but
Yeah,
one of the things that got me hooked on your first story, The Princess of Vandan, was, I mean, you wrote Alban as, kind of a typical, like cocky hero, like, oh, we're going for adventure, and very gradually you unravel a little bit more about him. I love how she seems very forgiving. Like, I mean, yeah, she still had to deal with him irritating her, but she has like a very
yeah,
like unconditional sense about her. Like, yeah, you annoy me, but there's something about you that draws me to you. I don't know what it is. I love you, and I think that's what got me, because I feel like I felt a lot. I could identify a lot with Prince Alban, as at that point in my life when I read your books, I was in a very bad place mentally. I was, like kind of a loner, like focusing on school. And this was around the time when I met my wife at college. And there was something about her that was like, you like me for me. Even if I'm like a very angry person, even though I'm kind of like stressed out, spaz, dealing with anxiety and
yeah, yeah,
depression. And I just saw her as almost like, it's almost like she's a genuine goddess. Like, she's caring for you, she forgives you, she'll be there for you, she protects you. And I just find it to be a very beautiful story. And ever since, I just couldn't get enough of it. And I really love what she represents.
yeah, yeah. No, thank you for that. Like, she's one of my favorite characters in all of my stories. Obviously, she and the rest of her family as well. But yeah, that's basically my favorite kind of giantess character is one who starts like a romantic relationship with a normal sized man, and then that sort of develops into something more deeper than that. So that's, yeah, basically what she is. She's a lot like other characters in stories I've written before then, but I think she's a bit better developed because when I first started writing, my skills as a writer weren't that good. So my stories were a lot shorter and not didn't go as deep into characters' emotional lives or their feelings as much as the Vandan stories did.
I will say though, like one of the things I was nervous about continuing like reading the Van Dan stories, since Valerie
Mm-hmm.
and Belina and Sylvie are so big and powerful, like there aren't really many threats to them. So I was beginning to
Yeah,
think
yeah,
like, how's Malaka gonna do this? Like, how's he gonna challenge them? How's he gonna, like make the stories like more intense? Like, what kind of dangers, what kind of villains are there gonna be? I have to say, you
yeah, yeah,
definitely did not disappoint. Like, I love how they range from humans who are egomaniacs, trying to destroy their kingdom, trying to prove no giantess is a match for me. And even with
yeah,
the more recent story, I won't give anything away with Far From Home for those who haven't read it, but I love how you make them very genuine threats. Like, not everything is just going to be a breeze. Like, she could just flick her finger and that's it. Like, it's a genuine
yeah, yeah.
threat.
That
And
would get boring very fast.
oh yeah.
Yeah,
And I do have to say, even though I really love your first story, The Princess of Vandan, I think
mm-hmm.
my absolute favorite has to be Far From Home, because again, I
Oh
won't give
yeah,
anything away, but the emotional roller coaster that you and Acrophyte put me through, I mean, it couldn't have
yeah,
come
yeah,
at a better time, because to the people who have listened to my videos, have watched my YouTube series, when I was reading the story, my wife and I suffered a miscarriage, and I was processing our loss, and a few days later, like, I read like the next chapter, and somebody, a major character dies in it, and I found myself literally tearing up, because I just couldn't handle it, and I was just like, oh my gosh, what's going to happen now? But it helped me process my grief. It helped me move forward and, look towards the new tomorrow. And I think a story, a character who could do that to me, a fictional character, mind you, I think that really highlights how powerful and unique the story is. And I have to give you and Acrophyte credit for, making something so deep and, so special.
Yeah, no, I'm very happy with that story as well. Considering I didn't actually write most of it, I just gave the outline to Acrophyte and he wrote it from there and then sent the chapters to me and I revised some of it or added a few paragraphs here and there. But yeah, it is, I wouldn't say it's my favorite of all the stories, but I am very happy with how it turned out. Really happy I could find someone who would be able to finish it for me because yeah, it is a difficult thing to write a story where a major character dies, and I prefer more happy ending stories myself.
Yeah.
But I felt this might be something different, something that's not. Otherwise, it's just another story in the series of traveling to a distant land and finding some threat to deal with, and then coming back home, and not really changing that much from the whole journey. So this might be something to just change up the story a bit and make it more emotional, and maybe people might connect with that more.
While we're on the topic, I definitely have to ask you this. When did you first come into contact with Acrophyte, and how exactly was he able to convince you to let him write some of Far From Home?
It wasn't that difficult. I have this big problem where when I get an idea for a story, I tend to abandon other stories that I'm writing at the moment, and then they just linger on for months without any new chapters being written while I'm busy trying to write a new story. So that was what happened with Chronicles of Vandan, I think was the third one, the one with the ogre invasion.
Oh, yeah.
That one was unfinished for a long time, and then Acrophyte sent me a note here on DeviantArt and asked me, so when is the story going to be finished? And if it's not going to be finished, can you at least tell me what will happen? So I sent him an outline of what will happen, and then he came back to me and said, well, if it's okay, maybe I suggested he could write it, or maybe he suggested he could write it. I can't remember now, but so eventually we came to an agreement that he could finish the story if he wanted to, based on the outline that I'd given him. I did write a few extra scenes for later chapters as well for that story, but most of the last few chapters are stuff that he's written. And then if I liked what I saw and I really like the story the way he wrote it, then could give him the future as well. So I've actually come up with a lot of extra stuff that's not in any of the stories written thus far of what will happen in the future. So that's basically what I sent to him, the whole story with Valerie and Albin in Far From Home, which is, I think that's the title he came up from that for that story. So yeah, that's basically how we operate, just communicating back and forth and finding out what works. I'm very happy that he's such a good writer, and also that he doesn't mind me or sending me the chapters so that I can revise them. If there's something that feels to me it doesn't quite fit in with the characters that I've created, then I can change it, and he wouldn't mind that. So it's a pretty good relationship.
I love that. One of my favorite things about Acrophyte is he definitely seems to have a passion for your stories, kind of same as the passion that I have for you. And I think, he's definitely a really good writer, and I feel like he's able to match your tone of the stories as well, like what it's like going on the journey. I don't know how much he's written and how much you've had input, but I feel like it's a pretty good match. Like you can't really tell like who's Malaka and who's Acrophyte, which is their words. Like you can't really tell a difference, and I think that's really what you'd want for somebody writing your work.
Yeah, and just keeping it consistent. And something that I was scared would happen would be that he would try and modernize it a bit, like use modern sounding language for the characters. Which I try to avoid as much as possible, so they don't use expression like that's really cool, something like that. But luckily that didn't happen. He kept the tone as it was more of a classic fantasy style, which the original stories were in. So yeah, I'm very happy with that as well.
I was reading one of his reviews for one of the stories he wrote, and somebody was asking him about how he was able to contact you, how he met you, and one of my favorite things he said was he kind of used the metaphor of you're basically George Lucas and he's Nathan Filoni, and I think that's a really cool like comparison, like like the creators of Star Wars. But how do you
Yeah,
feel
yeah,
with him comparing you to like George Lucas as this great storyteller, this creator of this great
yeah.
world?
Yeah, no, I wish my stories were as popular as the Star Wars stories. That would be great. But yeah, no, that's quite a compliment, I think. Like, obviously, I love the Star Wars movies like most other people. So I haven't actually seen any of the Dave Filoni shows. That's the guy that the Clone Wars, I think. Is that the name of the show?
Dave Filoni, sorry,
Yeah,
I keep
yeah,
getting
yeah,
him confused with Nathan Fillion or Filoni. It's just like I'm sorry.
yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, Dave, I think it's Dave Filoni, but yeah,
Yeah.
haven't actually seen any of the Star Wars TV shows. I've only seen the movies. So, but I'm assuming they're good as well.
I have seen a little bit of Clone Wars. They are kind of like a slow build up, but I think they
Yeah, yeah,
gradually get better with each season. And obviously, I can't recommend Mandalorian enough. Like if you haven't seen that, Book of Boba
yeah.
Fett
No, I haven't
kind of
seen it.
is good, but I won't go into too much detail. But yeah, I'd highly recommend it to you.
Yeah, I guess I'll have to wait for Disney Plus to come to South Africa because it's not available here yet.
Dang.
Yeah,
Maybe
we'll
one
find
day.
somewhere else to watch it, I guess.
Maybe one day.
Yeah, yeah,
While we're on the subject, yeah, I think in my early like reviews and my early contacts with you, I think we both shared how cool it would be to see it on the big screen. If anybody like did see
yeah.
potential in like the Princess of Vandan, whether it was a movie or a TV series, I really have to ask you this because I get such a kick out of it.
Hmm.
Who would you picture? Who would you imagine as like the characters from the Van Damme series? At the very least, anybody who you'd see as like Alban, or anybody who you'd see playing Valerie.
Uh, yeah, I haven't really thought about it. Just because the way I picture the characters in my mind is that they don't really look like any actual actors or anything. So
Gotcha.
to have someone else play them would be that would mean they don't look the way I pictured them. So it would kind of ruin it for me. I really like the actors you picked for them for the images on your narrations on YouTube. But if I were to have the movies made, I think for me the best way would probably be an animated film. Like I especially like the films of Hayao Miyazaki,
Oh
the
yeah,
Japanese animator. Yeah, yeah, The Spirited Away and Howl's Moving Castle. I don't know if you've seen those films.
I've seen some Miyazaki films like The Secret
Yeah,
Life
yeah.
of Arrietty, Kiki's Delivery
Oh, yeah,
Service,
yeah.
but
Yeah,
that's
I've seen
that's
Kiki's
actually
Delivery Service as well. But I really like that style of animation where everything's so nice and clearly drawn with the beautiful background as well. So having my characters done in that style, I think would be, for me, the best way to show them on a film. Because otherwise I don't really know who I would choose to play them. Um, I don't really.
that's
But
a,
yeah, I think of the actors that you chose, I really like. Who was it that you chose for Sylvie? Elle Fanning, right?
oh yes, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I think of all the ones that you chose, I think she fits the best. Just because she resembles the way I picture the character quite a bit. Whereas with some of, who was it that you chose for young Valerie? It was, I can't remember her name.
Alexandra Daddario.
Oh, yeah, yeah, that's right, yeah. Yeah, yeah, she doesn't quite resemble the way I picture young Valerie. Because, well, first of all, Valerie's supposed to be blonde-haired.
Yeah.
But, yeah, that's really a minor thing. But, yeah, she would be a good choice, I think, for Valerie. if it were a live action film, but then it would just make the character not quite the way I pictured her. But yeah, I guess the way characters look is probably not really the most important part of the character as a whole. As long as they convey the personalities, I think, yeah, lots of people could play them.
Yeah, I mean, first off, I agree. You know, like maybe making it an animated film on the same level as like a Miyazaki animation. I think, you know, not only
Yeah,
would it be like very beautiful to look at, but I think it would match like the tone also. Like, you know, like very beautiful landscapes, you know, like you can explore, you can appreciate the wonder of like lands like Elgon, Vandan, and even some of the other
yeah,
cities and towns. But I think you can do anything with animation. Like you don't have to worry about like budget
yeah,
cuts or like get that visual effect just right. Because for me, if it ever was to be live action, I think they would have to be on the same scope as something like Indian in the Cupboard, where it almost blends so seamlessly with like the small person and the big person. It's like, can they match it,
yeah,
or will the visual effects look off? Like the green lighting, the green screening, like it would have to be really perfect
yeah.
to match like that size differentiation between them.
Yeah, and it will also be difficult, I think, for the actors to play, like for whoever would play Alban and Valerie to interact with each other, because they both have to stand. Well, I think Valerie would probably stand if she were in the castle, like on a set, but then Alban would need to be in front of either a much bigger set or a green screen if he were standing in Valerie's hand.
Yeah.
So just getting him to look exactly in her eyes and having the lighting match up and things like that would be a lot more difficult in live action, I think.
And I also have to say, full disclosure, I picked the actors I did, especially with Alexandra Daddario as young Valerie and Carla Gugino
Yeah,
as older Valerie. I picked them only because
yeah,
I think they're the most attractive women in the world. I,
yeah,
uh,
yeah.
I,
No, I really like Carla Gugino as a choice as well, because I think also, yeah, besides being attractive, she's also a really good actress
oh
in the few
yeah.
films that I've seen her in. I actually haven't seen any films of Alexandra Daddario, that's why I couldn't remember her that well.
Well, one of the things that got me, you know, like thinking about Alexandra Daddario was when you look at her pictures, like she has these amazing eyes. Like they're like
Yeah, yeah,
looking into your soul. And I think that would be a really good feature to Valerie to have. Like you see these big eyes and they're just like looking through you. She sees everything in you.
yeah,
And I thought, well, I mean,
yeah,
maybe this
yeah.
could
She can
work.
see right through you. Like, yeah.
But I definitely appreciate I definitely appreciate your thumbs up or your your approval on that.
Endorsement.
Yeah,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
the whole time I was like doing this, I'm like, I didn't check in with the author. Like, what if he hates the choices I make? What if he doesn't like the actors or actresses? It just like,
Yeah, yeah.
I feel like a part of me should have contacted you before I started making these videos. Like at the very least, like get the
Yeah.
original makers like approval or stamp of approval. Like I felt like I was making like a remake of Nightmare on Elm Street without Wes Craven's approval. Like how cool would that have
Yeah,
been to
yeah.
like, hey, let me give you some pointers. Like this is what I picture and everything
Yeah.
else. But I kept going with how I pictured it and what my interpretation was. And I'm like, is this okay? Like I don't want to like destroy his vision or anything. Like maybe it could be better in his.
Yeah, no, I don't think I would be able to do it better if I were to narrate it. Because yeah, like you can probably English isn't my first language, and I rarely speak English at home. So I tend to pronounce words with a very strong Afrikaans accent. So if I were to narrate the stories, they would probably sound pretty weird.
Well, personally, I wouldn't think that. I think you have a really awesome accent, and it could probably give the
Yeah,
stories a little bit more gravitas. Like this is truly
yeah, yeah,
a foreign place. It isn't just some American saying, "Hey, this is a story that I
yeah,
read."
yeah, yeah. Yeah, the one thing that you did that I didn't. Well, that's not quite the same that I thought was the pronunciation, because I pronounced the oldest daughter. Her name is Belena, in the way I pictured it, but you said Belina, which is fine as well. But that was weird to hear.
I think it's because the other story that has a name similar to Belina was Thumbelina, and I just kept thinking,
Oh yeah,
oh, maybe that's
Thumbelina.
it, Belina. But I can definitely
Yeah, yeah.
understand it like Belena, kind of like
But then yeah, like I guess a more German way of pronouncing it.
I actually do have a little bit of German on my side. Going back,
Okay, yeah, same here.
awesome.
Mm,
But like I said before, I really appreciate your stamp of approval, and I think that's one of the great things about you, Malaka, is you definitely seem like so kind, so genuine, so friendly, and easygoing. And sometimes, when you make a story of your own, you want to put it in good hands. You want to make sure you put it in the hands of someone who understands it. Isn't gonna make too many like changes that get rid of the theme of the story. And I really appreciate you giving me the option to not only share these stories to get more people to read them, but
yeah,
inspiring me to like make more. Because when I made the first video, I have to admit I was disappointed in it. Like I was reading it myself, like trying to speak for Valerie, trying to speak for Alban, and it's just like I need somebody to
yeah,
bounce it off of, like a voice actress, maybe add some sounds, give it a little bit of life. And I hope
mm,
that the newer ones, like really make it feel a lot more real. And even if some of the pictures aren't really great, like some of them you could see like modern people in the background, or maybe they're not really wearing like
yeah, yeah,
authentic dresses or and everything. I hope that
yeah.
they
As long as
give,
it gives you an idea or
yeah.
something to base your vision of the story on, that's fine as well.
But yeah, I definitely look forward to Sylvie's travels when that finishes. And I don't know if you've known, but a very famous YouTuber who I met actually in college, Lisa ASMR. I've known her for a while. We've collaborated on a lot of videos. How do you feel
Yeah.
about her voicing Belena and Sylvie?
Oh no, I think she was great. Like all the voice actresses, I thought did a good job. Like obviously, I can't really criticize how they do the voices because the characters' voices aren't really described in the text. So, but yeah, I really enjoyed listening to her, and also the videos you did with her as well. Like I think there was several other giantess themed ones on your channel.
Oh yeah,
Those were really nice to listen to as well.
I have dabbled a little bit with Giantess ASMR because I think it's a very like interesting theme. It's a very interesting area to go into. I mean, obviously, we know that there's a group out there who fetishize giantesses, who are probably it's
Yeah,
probably more on the adult side, which I definitely get. I definitely support. I back it up. But I definitely
yeah, yeah,
prefer like the how do I put this? The like the more gentle stories that anybody can read this. It's not just for like adults. It's not just for kids. Anybody can read, I think, Princess of Vandan and really find it to be very
yeah.
unique and one of a kind.
Yeah, yeah, I'm glad you think so. I did put a bit more, some more violent scenes in here and there, but I guess that's okay. But I don't mind stories written for grown-ups as well, like more erotic stories. I can enjoy those stories as well, as long as they're well written and the characters are consistent and they don't behave in ways that no normal human beings would ever behave in, which is something that you find in a lot of these giantess stories, which I don't like. Like
Right.
just like giantesses suddenly once a woman grows into a giantess, she just suddenly wants to destroy everything, and that doesn't sound realistic to me. So I tend to avoid those kinds of stories.
Well, it also sounds like a very natural empowerment to women
Yeah,
or
yeah,
feminism, and I think nowadays, people really try to push for it. Like you see it all the time in like some of the new movies. I don't know if you're familiar with like woke culture, but I think that's the best thing about your stories because I mean, yeah, they're big, yeah, they're strong, but there's a lot more to them than just their size, their strength. They also have
mm,
the traditions or not traditions, the aspects that you do want in a character, like how friendly they are, how much they're willing to sacrifice, how resilient they are as people. You know, it's not just about waving
Yeah.
a sword saying, I'm big and strong, I'll slay you, I'm the toughest there is.
Yeah. Using the strength for the right reasons, I think, is something I try to make the giantess characters do. So if they're really strong and powerful, like, what do you do with that? Do you go out and conquer the lands and force everyone to obey you, or do you start a new home for people who maybe don't have anywhere else to stay, who are escaping from lands where they're being oppressed, and then come and live in your land? So maybe you can use your strength in a more positive way to give them a better life
Oh, yeah.
instead of forcing them to obey you. That's basically the whole of Valerie's whole purpose as a ruler, not just to make everyone obey her, but to lead them in a more positive way and show them how to be better.
And that's another thing that I really appreciate about Valerie, how she still cares about her people, even though they're humans and she's a giantess. And naturally, you know, there's a lot that she can do, but she's willing to lead them to, you know, a better lifestyle, live in the lands of the giants of old, and also trying to set a new standard for giants. Like, they're not just belligerent, bloodthirsty killers. You know, they could also be, you know, they could be like, they're great protectors, like from giant wolves or giant crows and even other magical forces.
Yeah, anything that the people aren't strong enough to defend against themselves, like invading armies or monsters or anything like that. Like, Valerie would do anything to protect the people who are under her care. And I think, so with Belena and Sylvie, once they become more important later on in the story. So.
While you're talking about the children of Vandan, I did want to ask you, with Valden, when I was reading about him, a part of me was like kind of hoping that maybe he's a little bit more than just a human, given that he's half giant. Maybe like he inherits like maybe something like very tough skin, unbreakable skin, or maybe he has like twice or thrice the strength of a human and he can maybe crush boulders, or maybe he can like beat that wyvern like back and forth like the Hulk. But then thinking about it, as cool as it sounds, it probably sounds a little too unrealistic. You know, like, he's still the size of a human, he still has a certain amount of like strength as a human. Was that your intention, like making Valden half giant but still human size, like keep him pretty normal, keep him like as strong as a regular human?
Yeah, that was basically, he's just, like, so all the women in the family of, they get their giant size from their mother, but then Valden gets his size from his father.
Right.
So he's more like Albin in that sense. But it's just, he's also the middle child, which is not an enviable position for a child to have. So he's a bit of the
definitely not
the odd one out there as well. But he gets. So my idea for him was basically make him a bit like the point of view character for some of the readers. So because everything around him is giant sized and it's all strange to him, having these giantesses as mother and sisters. So it'll probably make readers empathize with him more rather than Sylvie or Belena. But he's also one of my favorite characters. And I think he, basically living among the giants also helps him to be tougher, maybe not physically tougher, but mentally. So big problems don't scare him as much as they would otherwise, I think is the best way to describe it.
That's actually a good point, because I mean, like, in some of these stories, like the men are usually wanting to be heroes, knights, like going to battle, but for him it actually makes sense because, hey, I had to deal with two giant sisters. One of them is kind of a pain in the ass. The other, you know, like, I mean, we have a good relationship, which I always thought Belaine and them had a pretty decent relationship, which I like the dynamic and the difference between Belena and Sylvie, how one's more like Valerie, more kind, conscientious, maybe a little bit more timid, but Sylvie, she can be a wild card, like a little bit wild and out there.
Yeah, a bit of a handful, I guess. One way to describe her. And also it influences Valden as well, because he doesn't get along with Sylvie at all, so he always has this desire to go somewhere else and go on his own travels, which is eventually what happens with him. So he does enjoy going on adventures, but not necessarily in order to do heroic things, just in order to learn more about the world, I guess.
And you could say he gets a lot of that from his dad, like hearing about his journeys, his adventures, and wanting to explore the world, not just be confined to Vandan, the castle, having the responsibilities as king when he comes of age.
Yeah. He never really wanted to be a ruler of any kind. He's always more outgoing than that, and trying to just discover new places, because growing up in that sort of environment, that's where everything's so huge, must have been quite, I think, alienating to him. So he'd probably go and find somewhere else where he can fit in a bit better, and go and live there. Maybe that'll happen in a future story. So I'm still figuring out what to do with him after the events of Far From Home.
And something else that I want to bring up, not just to you, but to the people listening, I really appreciate you giving me the opportunity to continue Alban's story after Valerie's death, because I think that there could be a lot that could be explored with him, like, where does he go? Like, maybe reflect on, like, how he feels no longer being the king after stepping down, being away from his children for so long, but also, how is he grieving? Like, even though, like, he's accepted that she's died, like, has he really let her go? Like, does he ever, like, think about her, dream about her? Does he want her back? I'm still trying to figure out, like, what could be good story beats, because I don't want to retcon anything. I don't want to, like, destroy, like, what has happened, like lose the emotional center. But I'm kind of dealing with a little bit of writer's block, trying to figure out, like, where he's going, what he's doing. But as soon as I have an idea, like, what I can do, I'm definitely going to send it to you just to see what you think about it.
Yeah. No, I'd enjoy that. I think maybe a good idea for a story like that would be to go forward with Alban's story, but then also to include flashbacks of his time with Valerie, and maybe some moments that they shared together, or some experiences that happened to them, maybe when the children were younger, or even before the children were born. So that might influence what he does in the future as well.
I will share this, full disclosure. I do plan on doing a memory or a dream of their wedding, because I know I mentioned this to you before, but I wanted to read about the wedding, like how different that must have been for everybody else seeing this. Like, how was it conducted? Like, did Valerie conduct it? Did the father conduct it? Like, was he a little nervous? Was everybody else nervous? But they have such a amazing, like, chemistry together that I just hopefully I can write it in a way that matches your style and matches the tone. But I had to include that in my part.
It's weird you mentioned that. I actually can't believe I skipped over the wedding in my stories. I just wanted to go forward into the future immediately and then write a new story with the children. So that never happened in any of my stories. I think I did write a story for Belena and Lorik's wedding, which was quite a grand affair. I don't think Alban and Valerie's wedding would have been quite as grand as that. There wouldn't have been hundreds of people on tables everywhere in the room, and would have been a bit more basic than that, because at that time it was still, the kingdom of Vandan was still starting out. Was still in its early days, and they weren't even sure if it was going to work out or not, if they would be able to create a new kingdom here for people who wanted to come and live there. So there might have been a lot going on in those days as well, besides the wedding.
Absolutely. I want to make sure I cover all of those, because those are really good points to make, like how the people are still migrating over to Vandan. They're probably still going to keep getting threats from his father. But I do love, like, how no matter what problem, like, they're going to face with their new kingdom, they're going to face it together. And I think this wedding, definitely has to represent that they're together, that's all that matters to them. And, It's like Albin like finally found his place, like the woman of his dreams. But even though he does have to rule, he does have to become king, not just of Vandan but of Algon. He feels like he can do it
Yeah,
with her, and I think that's one of the greatest things about Valerie. Like, rule it your way. You don't have to live under your father's influence. We'll be doing it
yeah,
together the way we want to.
yeah, yeah. No, that's a good point. I think also once Albin does become king as well, after his father's death, then with Valerie as his queen, how would that impact all the people who are still living in Algon? Like, they wouldn't be used to the idea of having a giant-sized queen. So there might be some more obstacles to overcome there. So, but I think, yeah, Albin probably spent a lot more time in his hometown than Valerie did, just because, yeah, everything's the proper size compared to him, whereas she would probably have to stay outside the city because she's too big to go into the streets even. So, yeah.
Those are actually some pretty good ideas. I'm gonna have to find a way to write them into the draft that I have so far.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I'm also trying to come up at the moment with new ideas for new stories, especially with Belena as the new queen uh, after Valerie. So what does she do? Does she just stay in the castle the whole time, or does she go on journeys of her own? And I had an idea of having her go on a journey as well, but then exactly what would happen there and what exactly she'll do. She and Lorik will obviously go on the journey together, but then figuring out how to write a complete story from that takes a lot of time because, yeah, at the moment I'm still busy writing another story on DeviantArt, so I'll probably have to finish that first.
All right. Well, we should probably begin wrapping up with everything else.
Yeah.
But before I end this podcast with you, I did want to ask you one last question. Try to end it on a positive note. With everything
Okay.
that you've done in life, with your accomplishments, some of the hard times you've been through, in your opinion, um, sorry, that was a weird way to ask it. What do you love most about your life?
I don't know. I guess at the moment it's the fact that I'm doing so many different things. Uh, Maybe a weird way to put it. Like at the moment, I don't really have a single job that I've been doing for a long time. Like every year, I get to do something else. At the moment, I'm busy helping a student with disabilities here in Pretoria, working as a facilitator for him. So that's kind of a new direction I've been going in for a few years now. Before that, I did field guide work. I've done some geology work as well. That was what I studied at university. So yeah, basically the fact that I'm doing so many different things is one of the things I really like about my life at the moment, even though in the long term, I guess I should probably start finding a more stable direction in which I want my life to go.
I love that for you. I love how you're doing a lot of things with your life, and it definitely sounds like you're trying to live life to the fullest. Do as much as you can, travel to various places, maybe wear certain
Yeah.
hats that maybe they're a good fit, maybe not. But I definitely find that awesome. I think a lot of people don't really have that luxury.
Yeah, I know. I'm very, very fortunate in that sense, I guess, like that I'm able to do that, like, and also find time for writing in between. So
Absolutely.
that's one of the other reasons why my stories sometimes take so long for new chapters to appear, just because I've got all these other things going on as well.
Hey, that's a pretty good excuse, I mean, if
Yeah.
some people, don't write it just because, I don't want to.
Yeah. So if I don't really feel in the mood for writing, I can't really force myself to write. I have to really want to do it. So I also have to wait, like even on a day like today when I'm not doing anything. I didn't do any writing today because I was just like, do I really feel like I have something to add to the story at the moment, or should I wait for another day when I've got a bit more inspiration?
That sounds really awesome. I mean, it was really good talking to you, Malaka. I'm
Yeah,
super glad I was able to talk to you voice to voice, if
yeah,
if not
same
face to
here.
face. But I really appreciate what you've done for the Giantess community. I really appreciate your stories, and I look forward to whenever the new ones come out.
Yeah, well, maybe hopefully later this year. So we'll see how it goes. Because the problem again is, like, after I've done writing the story on DeviantArt, my miniature life, like, I've got several other ideas. Which one should I focus on? That's also, that's why I've done the last time I decided to write a new story, I did a poll on DeviantArt, asking all the people who watch me to vote on what story they would like. So maybe I'll do that again. Or maybe I'll just write the next Vandan story regardless.
Yeah, his stories are really great, guys. If you want to check out his work, you could check out Giantess World, look up author Malaka. He's got all kinds of good stories out there. Princess of Vandan, one of my favorites, but he's got all sorts of other ones you can check out. Also check out his DeviantArt page. He's under the name Majestic Giantess. A lot of great pictures, a lot of great stories on there. Check him out, support him, give him a like. I mean, I can't tell you how much of a pleasure it was to talk to you, Malaka.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure for me as well. And it's really something that I never would have expected would have happened when I first started writing stories 12 years ago when I was still in school. So it's been really nice. A really good journey, I think.
Yeah, it's an amazing journey, and hopefully you get to keep doing it. Hopefully everybody gets to experience the fruits of your labor, enjoy your stories going forward, and yeah, I really look forward to reading more.
Okay, thank you. I think I'll probably keep on writing stories for lots of years to come, even if it takes a really long time between chapters. It's something I really enjoy doing, and I also really enjoy hearing what people think about it and getting feedback, and then also, just seeing people enjoy the stories really means a lot to me. So I'm glad I can be able to do that.
Yeah, they've definitely touched my heart, and I think they'll continue to touch my heart. So, again, I want to thank you for being a guest on here, and I look forward to sharing this with everybody.
Okay, thank you very much, and pleasure hearing from you. Thank you for doing this.
Thank you. You have yourself a good day, and I hope everything goes good for you.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm probably going to make dinner soon. It's about that time of day at the moment, so I'm glad we were able to do it earlier.
Well, I'm about to get ready to have lunch.
Okay, so it works out.
All right. You take care of yourself, Malaka.
All right. Thanks. Same to you.
Thank you.
Hear from you again. Cheers. Bye-bye.
Bye. I'd like to thank everybody for listening to today's first episode. That was Malaka, the author of Princess of Vandan and a bunch of other works. Like I mentioned before, check out his DeviantArt page, username Majestic Giantess, and also check out his Giantess stories at Giantess World. They're really amazing stories. Really happy to have him as a guest, and hope you guys tune in next week where I get to have a chat with Acrophyte, his co-author. Hope you guys have a pleasant weekend, and I'll see you next time here on the Podcasters of Vandan.